Leighton and Sam, good to have you back for round two. Thanks very much for joining us for the couple of days up here, and I know schedules are tight, and I think you await the winner of the tie, don't you, between Slovakia and the US. You've named your team. I guess a question for you, what excites you the most as you forecast forward to the end of the year? What are you anticipating? What do the girls need to do to try to knock the winner of that tie over and hopefully go deep at the Billie Jean King Cup finals?
Yeah, so we play the winner of the US and Slovakia. You said we've named the team. We still got one player to go, which we did just make a decision, but nobody knows yet. So out of courtesy, I'm not going to say who that last person is just yet. But look, I think I'm obviously really looking forward to getting the whole team and group back together again. We've had one. It'd be great to try and go deep in this next one. Obviously, we'll be watching the US and Slovakia very closely for who's going to be playing. But I think, as you all know, Olivia's now a number one ranked woman player, so this is her debut in the team, which I think is huge for her, her own career, great for us. So really excited to have her part of the mix and see how we can, all come together in that. That's going to be a new experience for her. Isla, obviously, been there now for a number of years and, probably striving to get back to that number one position. Dasha coming back from injury a little bit. And Ellen also with a bit of an injury at the moment, but fingers crossed, literally, she'll be okay. And then, we have our fifth player. So I think, just getting everyone back together, really building that confidence in everyone again. And Davis Cup, Billie Jean King Cup, anything can happen on paper when it, depending who we play, may not necessarily be the favourite on paper ranking-wise, but, that really is irrelevant in these competitions. You work together as a team, you've got your teammates on the sideline, doing everything you can for you during those matches, and anything can happen. So we believe we can have a good shot.
Yeah, awesome. You could have given us the exclusive, but you're playing the cards close to your chest, which is fair enough. Leighton, before I come to you, I should have said to everyone in the room, both Leighton and Sam said to me last night over dinner that they were happy, and rather than, I'm sure everyone would agree, rather than hear from me asking them the questions, they wanted to throw to the group and provide them the opportunity.
It wasn't
to ask
just
questions.
you. I thought you had great questions. But
no.
It was just
evidently not.
I thought, after everything, I guess, that was spoken about yesterday and the chance to, get a connection with the pro players as well, some of the top guys, and playing in a team environment. And I know some of these coaches take junior teams away as well, and I've seen it firsthand. Bernie a couple of years ago, just on the back of COVID in India, and my appreciation for what these coaches do as well. It's a lot tougher than actually taking the pros away, dealing with 13 and 14-year-olds over there in some pretty average settings. So, I feel like there's that chance for connection, that's all, if anyone has any questions.
So start to formulate those guys, and feel free, certainly the second half of the session that we've got, I'm going to throw to the room for some questions. Leighton, you said something really interesting to me last night over dinner around looking ahead, I suppose, to Davis Cup and the finals, and you led the boys out of the group of death in Valencia and made your way through, and you described the big call that you made around Thanasi and the interrupted preparation. You touched on that yesterday. And then you said to me, in the same breath, or the other side of that coin, and providing Thanasi an opportunity, you said to me, and you told me a little bit about what you find the very worst part of the job. Just take us behind the curtain in terms of some of those hard conversations, those difficult conversations you're having, how you go about that, perhaps what you've learned along the way.
Yeah, it's so I'm a big believer in preparation, and that's one of the keys to trying to build success. We've got to be prepared and not have any excuses when the team goes out there to perform. With that said, then I want to cross every box that I possibly can going into these ties. So, I've been a big believer that I wanted, even though we can name 5, I want 6 guys there just in case. These ties aren't easy. The last one in particular, we had to play on the Tuesday after finishing the US Open, finishes on the Sunday. The boys' doubles was the Saturday. A lot of things can change. So I want to have these 6 guys. And over the last few years now, I've been able to build a rapport with the 6 guys that I believe are capable of winning the Davis Cup. And we've come bloody close the last couple of years. But they've been able to push each other to get better as well. The hardest thing is always having those 6 guys, and then they don't know until probably a day before we're playing our first tie, or normally if our tie's, for example, on the Friday, I'll probably let them know on the Wednesday afternoon after that session, basically, of the 5 guys, and actually going down and sitting with one of them and actually pulling them aside and having that chat and telling them they're not going to be part of the 5. But I can't tell you how proud I am, and there's one in particular. It was in Manchester last year, Alexi Poprin, and it was just the way that it turned out. There were opportunities in doubles. I didn't know which way we were going to go with the doubles, so I needed Tomo as a backup doubles player. He can pinch hit singles and doubles. So there were reasons behind, but Alexi was doing absolutely everything that we asked of him in practice. He's improving as a player. You can see his growth and being around the team. But to pull him aside, and we went in the locker room, it was just the 2 of us, and to have that open heart-to-heart conversation with a young guy who's desperate to be out there and wear the green and gold. It is the hardest part of my job, and it's something I don't enjoy at all. But the way Alexi handled it was second to none. It was incredible. He took probably 15, 20 minutes to himself in the locker room, and then he came out after that and he was picking up balls. He came and asked me, what can I do to help? Do they doubles guys need me to stand in a corner, to do any drills? And it didn't go unnoticed. The rest of the team, we sort of do a toast and roast at the end of the tie where we sit down and go through, and the amount of comments that Alexi got from the rest of the boys about the appreciation of what he did for the rest of the team. And I thought it was massive. And Alex was the one who felt like he'd grown up with Alexi. They came through the same age group. How close they got within that week just because of the way Alexi handled things, how he was on the bench, doing little things for all the rest of the team was very impressive.
Yeah, wow. So that's the team dynamic that we don't often get to see in the sport on full display there, and a credit to what everyone's building there. I just wanted to pick at a thread from yesterday. Lloydie touched on it yesterday, deep in the day, and it came up from some of the guest presenters along the way yesterday, that notion of high-performing performance, and let's decide whether it's high or not later, and then just common performance. And I wanted to perhaps start with you, Leighton, and then I'll come to Sam. When you're dealing with an individual or a team in front of you, what is it? What are the tangible traits that when you see an individual over their pre-season, or you jump on court with them both yourselves, and how do you know, what can you tangibly point to and say, that's a high-performing athlete right now versus that athlete's just going through the motions, they're just performing, or perhaps even worse, they're just being common about what they do? What are some of those things?
I think effort is the big one for me, and we spoke about it yesterday as non-negotiables kind of. I think a little bit we're working with the absolute cream of the crop though in our space as well.
Yep.
So for us to come across, these guys are so driven now themselves. The preparation that they go through, as a lot of the strength and conditioning guys know, and the physios, these guys are doing an hour warm-ups before they go onto the actual 30-minute warm-up hit before their matches. They are so professional in that. So in terms of that stuff, it's not a lot of question marks for me. You're overseeing and making sure they're in the right headspace and they're ready to go. In terms of dealing with phones and all that stuff, they're too professional now, the guys that I'm dealing with. It's really about the effort that they put in on the court, I think, and having that 100% that purpose that every time I get onto the practice court, I'm going to try and walk off this practice court a better player than when I walked on it. And that's a little bit up to us as the coaches of the Davis Cup team to sort of go and instruct them, as well a little bit, and actually push them to keep thinking about that and actually ask, okay, so we're out here today, we're getting ready to play Taylor Fritz. What are we working on here? And, throw it back on them a little bit. What are your ideas? And then I can actually add in what I'm thinking as well, but at least it stays on top of their mind what the purpose is of actually being out here today. And that's one big thing that, Rochi, when he was working with me back when I was playing, was every single time I stepped onto the practice court, I wanted to do something better than when I, first walked onto the court. And that might have been just short slice backhand and being able to execute that a little bit better, and later in my career I wasn't moving as well as I, was certainly at my best, but there were still areas of my game that I could work on to get slightly better. And I think that's a good mindset for any player at any age. Every time they get onto the court, it's hard work and trying to become a better player.
Awesome. And you, Sam?
I mean, that's a pretty good answer. There's not really a huge amount to add there, but I think effort's definitely big. But like you said, you'd like to think that at that space that's happening regardless. I think it's all the little bits that you don't necessarily see when you're on the practice court. It is the preparation beforehand. It's getting up early enough, having a good breakfast. It's being prepared. It's doing the recovery. It's, maybe your friends are going out that night, but you know what, I am pretty buggered. I'm not going to go.
Yep.
I'm going to get a good rest and then come back and do it again the next day. So, I think the on-court stuff is kind of obvious what that should be,
Yep.
but I think it's the things, that you don't see. They might think about their match that little bit more, or, get the vision themselves and
Yep.
take a look at it and that sort of stuff, where I think, all right, you are trying to be the best performing athlete you can.
Yeah, cool. And this came up yesterday as well. So obviously we saw you, those of us that were back here in Australia, we saw you on our screens over there in New York, and it was a great, a phenomenal week for Australian women's tennis. We had 5 Australian women qualify for the main draw in the US Open, and you would have been juggling, I imagine, scurrying between the different courts, etc. So
I did miss some matches,
Yeah.
I won't lie.
there was a little bit of magic in the air that week. But I asked you last night to reflect on coming out of that magic and then thinking about the folks in the room, or the collective energy in the room, for us to get more of that type of sustained success over the next 5 years, over the next 10 years. One of the things you spoke about yesterday was you come onto the court here at BJK Cup, and I think you're a little bit, without wanting to put words in your mouth, maybe a little bit underwhelmed at times that players perhaps don't have that clarity of what it is they're working on at any one time. And you mentioned you're big on that. You'd like that to change. So that might be one thing. What are another, perhaps 1 or 2 things that for you are non-negotiables in starting to shape the next generation of Australian tennis that you'd like to see stamped as must-haves coming out of the room as we turn our attention to the next generation coming through the ranks?
Yeah, look, I think obviously that's something I do feel strongly about, and yes, it is up to the coaches to always have a plan and bring that, but again, like I said yesterday, to educate the players so when they're maybe 25 and they need to, do some weeks on their own, they actually know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I just think you then start to look a little more internally about your own tennis and game style, or your strengths or weaknesses, if you actually that buy in yourself as well, as part of that. But I think, tennis-wise, I guess we're sort of going to talk about this maybe later, but I'll blend it in. You need to have a weapon. You need to be really good at something and pretty good at most. And, I think going out and working on certain things and spending that bit of extra time, and, whether it's I'm going to work on my second serve, I'm not always going to hit it the same spot. I'm going to do that, or whatever it may be. Kind of taking that ownership of, I want to do more of that, or I need to go out there and, practice A, B, and C a little bit more, and be inquisitive about what you're doing with your coach and have those conversations. I just think it makes you better. But, then on court, that real determination and grit to want to be better. And I think, having the 5 girls qualify in New York, they all, it's been a bit of a thing, we've talked about it all year with some people, they haven't always had that constant support around them. But you look at the 5 that qualied, Kim had Pratty, Pri had Julia, Roddy had a friend of hers, not her coach, but actually a person she could look to from the box every single time and know that she had that support. Maya had Chris. Who have I missed out?
You've done pretty well.
No, there's one more. Destiny and Corey there. So, I don't think it's a coincidence that those 5, Cody was there with Taylor, she lost in the last round, but it's, I think it's so important that you have that kind of constant support, and they all had that at that time and really used that and drove it. And you see your friend doing it, one of your competitors doing it, because we are competitors as well. You want to be that person who's in the main draw and getting that shot. So I really believe if you're seeing it happen with your peers, you don't want to get left behind. Yeah. So I really do think that was also part of part of the New York factor, which hopefully we could have more of.
Yeah, cool. Leighton, I think it was last week I heard you at the launch of the Australian Open, and you spoke about your views on the physicality of the game. The game continues to grow and evolve. You mentioned how impressed I think you've been, or just what has made you sit up, I guess, and take notice of where the game's heading. Again, forecasting forward based on what you've seen from your playing journey and now your Davis Cup captaincy journey, and what you think might be to come over the next 5 or 10 years. Where's the game heading in your mind? What are those non-negotiables that were perhaps there 5 or 10 years ago? Are they shifting? Just forecast forward a little bit. Use your crystal ball.
Well, there's two guys. It depends where they take the game, to be honest. It's incredible how good those two guys are. Sinner and Alcaraz. They're awesome, and they're going to be around for an awfully long time. They're so good on every surface, so professional. It's great for men's tennis because everyone was so worried after the big three, the big four. When they move on, who's going to be there to take the mantle? And to have two guys that are going to be unbelievable ambassadors for our game is fantastic for the sport of tennis. And as I said at the AO launch, I said if it's not for one of the Aussies pushing towards the semi and the final, that's the final we want, in terms of getting people watching our sport in Australia. Both great guys, on and off the court as well. But the way I felt like the game was obviously going towards big weapons. A lot of these taller 6'2", 6'3" guys, how well they move now, how well they return and make balls as well out of their corners. Back when I was first starting, you were playing someone 6'3", I just had to make 2 balls, get a couple of returns in, and I was on top of the point. That's completely changed now. But it felt like the courts have got slower. For the most part, most of the tour now is pretty slow. So the ball's sitting there. These big guys get that first hit at the ball, first cut, and they're just going as hard as they can. With the technology, the rackets, the string, it feels like they can have that bigger rip at it, and it's not going to go out. I feel like, especially Alcaraz now, he's got this complete all-court game. He brings in the aggressive drop shot now. His movement is second to none around the court. So I feel like it's starting to slowly come back, and I think that's a big thing for the juniors now to keep working on an all-court game. You've got to work out other ways of winning points out there because the majority of the tour moves so well across the baseline now. They can get so many balls back. You've got to be able to break sidelines with angles. And I think that's another thing, but it comes back to our juniors playing more on clay as well. Learning other ways to actually win points than just going out there and trying to hit through their opponents all the time on hard court, So I think that's one side of it. But, I'm seeing a lot more of these guys, the younger guys, looking to press and come forward. The one thing in Sinner which has impressed me so much, and he's in control of his team. I know what's going on now is who knows what's going to happen with that and how it played out. But I've seen firsthand, he made the quarterfinals of the Australian Open 3 or 4 years ago, 3 years ago maybe, and he destroyed Alex in the round of 16. And he got beaten against Tsitsipas in the very next round convincingly, and I actually thought he would win that match. 2 days after that, he got rid of the majority of his team and wanted to start fresh and find team that he thought, okay, I've cracked the top 10 now, but he didn't believe that he could get to the top of the game with the team he had, and he wanted to find the exact people that could do that. And that was someone really in control of where he wanted to go and how he wanted to get there. With that in mind, yes, he's got a great team around him, but how he's been working on his game as he's been playing on the tour is so incredible. His serve the last 2 years has gradually just kept improving while he's still winning so many matches and pushing deep in Grand Slams. You watch him now, especially early on in tournaments, how much he tries to get into the net and finish the points off of the net because he knows to beat Alcaraz, to beat these Novak in these big matches, later in the tournament, he's going to have to do it. And, I even know as a player myself, I got told so many times, especially by Newt, get into the net. Start finishing off points. It's going to be so much easier on your body and that. But to be able to do it in the heat of the moment in a battle where we're all competitors and we want to go out and win is not easy. It's a different mindset. And so that's one thing I've been so impressed with Jannik Sinner, that he's able to do that. But these two guys, I don't go and watch, obviously, that close some of these matches towards the Slam finals of other players. And I was fortunate enough to watch the Alcaraz-Novak final at Wimbledon this year, and I could not believe how good he was on grass. This is a surface he didn't grow up on at all. He's a complete player. The firepower that he possesses, his movement, the way he's able to use slice to defend out of corners, make that extra ball. Novak looking to come in, he's able to turn defence into offence in one hit as well now. So I think movement is a big part of it, and also with the kids coming through now, fitness. These guys are all fit. And that's what we've got. It's something we control. We don't have to go out there and actually be talented to be fit. Everyone can go out there and get as fit as possible that they can last 5 sets. And to be able to do that is bloody important. And you only got to look back at the Aussie Open final last year when, Sinner was able to do that from 2 sets to love down against Medvedev.
Cool. I might ask you both about this notion of, for as long as I've been involved in Australian tennis anyway, this notion of the Australian way, and it's clearly something that you've both had a big say in shaping. But different coaches and I think different stakeholders along the way will have a different view on, does that mean a tactical style of play? Is that psychological? Is it, from a character perspective particularly, I might get you to both talk to, in your minds, what does the Australian way represent? When you see Australians representing the country out there on the global stage, what is it that you want to see or feel or emanate through the qualities that you're seeing on display from those athletes out there? Leighton, you can go.
Well, for me, it's a lot of just what I spoke about, to be honest. It's about being fit, putting in the hard work. You know, they're the things you control out there, but competing. That's always what we pride ourselves on as a nation. We go out there, as soon as we cross the white line, we have a crack. We leave it all out there and have no excuses when we walk off. And I feel like a little bit when I go around to junior tournaments and I see the difference between Europe and Australia, there's a lot more tapping out here in Australia. There is. You know, as soon as we get down, a lot of the kids are, you know, they'll throw it in and, well, I could have won that match if I can, you know, was 100% fit, or, you know, if I tried my hardest, I would have got out of that match or won. Nah, it's not good enough. You know, you've got to lay it on the line, and somehow we've got to get through to the kids to be able to do that. Yeah, I'm fortunate, as I said, in our space it's different because these guys are at the very top of the game. Obviously, I'm seeing now a little bit more of the junior side of things. And you go over to Europe and you don't see any of that. You've got to win every match from the first round. You've got to find a way to dig deep. Even when things aren't going well, you're getting bad line calls, you're getting hooked, whatever it is out there, you've still got to put that to the side. And it makes you tougher out there. And I think, you know, when I look back to the Roche days and all those things, it was the fitness, it was going out there and competing your ass off every single day you got on the court. And even, you know, myself, Rafter, that's what we prided ourselves on. And so I think we can still do that. In terms of game style, I think, as I said, back in the day, Australia was seen as, you know, grass court specialists, serve volley, the likes. The game's changed, but I still think we've got to become all-court players. You know, we're not prepared just to sit back and, you know, either rally or just get on the baseline and try and slap winners.
Yeah. And Sam?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, people even thought that I was this grass court specialist serve and volley player. And I'm like, have you ever watched me play tennis? But yeah, that sort of, that is gone. I agree, you do need to be more of an all-court player. But just about the character sides, I think I look to the word, like, you got to have grit and determination and desire to want to be out there. Like, it's a really hard job. It's a really hard thing to do, and it's really hard to be really good at. But if you've got that desire to want to do it, it's possible. If you don't have that, I think it's hard to be the best you can be. Yeah, I mean, it's exactly what Leighton said, but I think those things are what we look to in Australia, not just in tennis, in any sport. We love sport in this country. It doesn't matter, you know, whether you follow cricket or whatever. Like, I think everyone turns on the Boxing Day test. Like, you just get behind our Australian teams, and I think it goes. That's why we love the Olympics so much, and the whole country buys in. So I think that's what people love to see, is that, yes, you all want to win, but I think if you can show that and really emanate those things, you're going to have the support of everyone. I think that is the Australian way.
Yeah, awesome. I think that's really well encapsulated. So I might pause there and take the opportunity that both Leighton and Sam offered up last night over dinner to throw to the room. So feel free to fire away, guys. Ask your questions of Leighton and Sam while we've both got them in the room.
One, you know, take a lot of our juniors away and things like that. In summary, I think you mentioned it, is they get angry early and easily, but the better players that they lose against can get angry but still compete. What's the answer?
Yeah, I don't know. I think when I think about it, I think we have to try and put perspective on the kids as the number one goal is competing and having a good attitude and competing 100% the whole time. The result will take care of itself. We're so result-driven. Parents, kids looking at UTRs, the works, you know. And I think to get back to that, no matter what, we're all going to have bad days. We're all going to go out there and things aren't going to work, and for some reason, our legs are going to feel heavy. We're not going to play great or whatever. But as long as you, as the coach, know, and I think when the player can feel like the coach is proud of them because they've gone out there and at least competed and given 100%, then I think that you can have that bond with the player then as well, and they know, okay, well, and you can have that open discussion about not every day is going to be perfect. But I think that's the one thing that we have to get back to, in terms of every kid going out there, every time, that's what makes the coach proud. I'm happy if you go out there and you miss a few of those off forehands we're working on, that's fine, it doesn't matter. But as long as you're going out there and giving 100% and laying it on the line, win or lose, and you walk off, and I'm proud, and we're going to go back to work after that, and it doesn't matter. I think that honestly, through juniors, I think that's one of the key things to be able to, from what I've seen anyway, there's just too many. When the going gets tough, the frustration just builds up, and then, I want out. I don't want to be here. And I don't have the actual answer, but I'm just trying to think in a way of, if a coach is working, the kid wants to know as well that the coach is proud of them. They walk off the court and the coach is happy with their performance. Well, it doesn't always have to be win and loss out there. So junior results don't matter. They really don't. At the end of the day, you want to be working on your game, your technique, everything, to be able, that it's going to hold up in the pressure and demands of playing out here and on the big stage. So we've got to change that mindset, I think, as well.
Like when you think back when you were a junior, old people in the room will remember when you were really young, but did you have that mindset? Were you
Yeah, I was a competitor, 100%. I didn't want to lose. But
were you focusing on the result, being a young kid?
I probably was to a degree, but for me it was probably more about always giving my best, and I knew where I wanted to go as well, so I was always looking at the big picture, and nothing ever seemed good enough for me, even if I won a junior tournament, I guess. But I had that. Peter Smith in Adelaide drilled that into me from a young age. It never felt like anything result-wise was good enough. Like, there's always players that I've got to be pushing towards to get better and compete against. I went over to a lot of those junior tournaments that the kids went away to. I'd never played on clay, and I won 3 out of the 4 tournaments. They're saying you're number 1 player in the age for your in under 14s. I didn't even know what that meant, and it wasn't good enough for Peter. So for me, it sort of brought it back. But it was always about going out there and competing and giving 100%. Maybe that was the reason I was able to transition quicker than a lot of the other juniors as well at the time. Because of that kind of attitude that I was always going to go out there and give my best. And you'll be surprised how many times you actually win matches if you stay out there and compete and have a crack and lay it on the line. Because a lot of the time, I feel like as well, sorry, just adding on, a lot of the time, and it's not easy, I get it, but they're looking at themselves out there. They're not looking, your opponent's in the same position a lot of these times. It's a one-on-one sport, right? They've got to stop analysing absolutely everything they're doing and actually keep an open mind to what's going on down the other end of the court as well. And I feel like in a lot of our juniors, it's so consumed on themselves and their emotions, instead of actually seeing what's going on and actually take some time. The things they can do is taking time in between points, before they serve, where they're in complete control of setting up the point as well. Obviously being fit, these things that it doesn't matter how good your opponent is, you control those.
Leighton, we sometimes talk about, I guess, the impact that Nick and Bernie have had on Australian tennis. And you've dealt with those guys in a Davis Cup setting, and I guess the challenges around that versus, sounds like, very happy with the culture and the environment that's been created now. So in your mind, is that, I suppose, solidify what you're looking for in a team culture, and then perhaps make the criteria a bit more stringent, irrespective of the level of the player?
Yeah, absolutely. And it hit home with me yesterday with Lachlan with the Melbourne Storms, and there was something on one of the slides about, those great players, and then if your best player is the hardest worker in the team and the most humble, it might have been Steph Curry actually they were talking about. And for me that really hit home, because that's the biggest difference there is. I keep talking about culture, and I'm saying how great it is now and the success has come. There were a lot of tough moments, where we'd be on edge in the hotel lobby waiting to see if players were going out the night before matches, and there's a lot of difficult moments that we've been through on the Davis Cup journey, dealing with different egos as well, and it does set the wrong you know, when we're going out there and we only have certain times on centre court and the rest of the team sees players going out there and just stuffing around and taking the piss in practice sessions, that you got to come down hard on that. But it is hard at the time when that's your number one player as well, leading into a tie. So for me, the culture thing was a massive piece. Obviously, we tried to drill it into Demon from a pretty young age and what it meant. And then he's been an unbelievable player leader. He leads by example every single time he comes. Even when new guys come in, there's always different dynamics coming into the team and different personalities. But the way that they've all been able to gel because they've seen the standard that Alex has set. So that's where they expect to go. And I've seen it firsthand with Tanasi, firsthand. He's a different kid when he's in the Davis Cup team around Alex and these boys at the moment. Completely different player. And then I'm prepared to put my balls on the line for him when he's 85 in the world, and I'm picking him over some guys that are 25 in the world. You know, because I know that Davis Cup, when he's around these guys and I'm on the court with him and trying to get him focused in, it's a completely different setting now. And he knows what the standards are and what we expect of him every single time he's out there, which in the past when he'd been at Tyres, and I've even played with him and Nick in Darwin, and it was a disaster. And I think that's where it comes back to, we have to, from a young age, I know it's hard, like I'm sort of throwing it back on you guys a little bit in some ways, but we can't, they're non-negotiables, they aren't. It's not worth it. And I don't certainly want to deal with it. I might be out of here by then, but yeah, once they get to that age, it's not easy. It's not easy to change it, that's all.
Go, Robert.
You mentioned preparation is a big part of your philosophy a couple of times now. So can you just elaborate maybe on like how you use preparation to get the best out of the players? Like what parts of it?
Well, for me, it's always having the time to be with them before the tie, to be able to get them in the right frame of mind, to be able to put the work into them on the practice court, whatever surface we're going to be playing on, to get the most, but also mentally to be able to switch them on to what they need to be focusing on before the tie. I think that's a big part of it. Going into the ties, it's about giving them an idea of the way that we're leaning towards the team and what potential matchups they might be playing as well, so they can start focusing on those things. But I'm just a massive believer in doing the hard work beforehand so we can get the results when we finally want to go out there and play. Yeah, in terms of preparation, that's everything though. It's not just the on-court stuff. It's being able to have the conversation about what they're working on with their team and me going to their private coaches and having those chats as well. So I'm across absolutely everything that they've been working on for the last 3 months leading into a tie. Yeah, so not only preparing the players, but for me to be very prepared as well going in, that anything that might get thrown my way, I'm able to deal with out there.
Or if you have one, I think. Go, Raph.
This is for both of you, and just linking back into the grit and the competitiveness as a non-negotiable, and probably just to inform us working with the younger kids, do you think it's maybe nature, nurture, a bit of both, and at what stage does it become a non-negotiable? Because it's part of our job to try to bring them along for that journey and hopefully bring the competitor out of them or take it to a new level. And with that, have you seen anybody or a cohort change along the way, or have they always sort of had it?
Yeah, I mean, I do think it can start earlier. I mean, there's whether you're 8 or 10 or 15, you can still run for every ball. You can try hard. You can, try and make a good decision. Obviously, the younger it gets, there's those things are sort of not in play, but you can still, like I said, just do your best. Like, it sounds really simple, but not everyone can do it, and not everyone seems to want to do it. And I think some are going to have that naturally, and others, it needs to be taught. Like, when I was growing up, I didn't know how to put all my game together. I didn't know what the level was until I got taught it. And I think the younger the age that you can teach that to these players, then it becomes second nature. So maybe when they're 16, they're realising that this is my warm-up. This is what a standard warm-up is, to then go and do the best I can do. It's not waiting till you're 20 to do everything that should be done, So I think it's good habits, and that desire, that grit, and just being okay to put yourself on the line. Like, you're not going to win every match. You're not going to get it all perfect. But you also shouldn't when you're that age. Like, the pros don't get it perfect every time. So why should a 15-year-old think that they shouldn't miss a ball if they go for it? Like, if you kind of think about it logically, it shouldn't even come into the equation. But in the heat of the moment, everything it does. But I think, yeah, teaching them that it's okay to miss if you're doing the right thing. And what those things are is huge, because you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know until you've been taught it, or you see it, or you've been around it, or whatever it may be. So I think having that environment where, from court 1 to court 8, they're all trying hard, every single point. And if that can only be done for an hour, that's okay, because in 3 months' time, it might be an hour and 15 minutes. Then it might be an hour and a half. But if it's just going through the motions for 3 hours to tick the box and be out there for that time to feel like you've done something good that day, really doesn't matter. I think that's just a waste of time. So yeah, I just think that goes back to having that purpose. And I think, as I said, from depending on the ages, that kind of is different, but everyone can try hard.
Scotty?
This is to you both. We're about to go into, how we can bring character to life. And you may have heard yesterday, because you're probably still familiarising yourself with it, we've got this kind of overarching philosophy of striving to be the best version of yourself every day. And then there's kind of 5 kind of character attributes that sit underneath that. So we've got this idea of effort over outcome, which you've kind of both spoken to. We've got humility and respect, self-regulation and perspective. We've got honesty and ownership, and this idea of courage, doing the things that matter no matter how you feel, right? So there's the kind of context. As good as both you were, and obviously as good as both characters you were to have the success you had, part of the humility bit is this idea of no matter how good you are, you can always get better. From a character perspective, is there any reflections that you have in your career to go, I wouldn't mind being a little bit better in that area from a character perspective, or a personal qualities perspective, or is there something that you think, as good as you were, that you could have been even better at?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's like anybody. You can improve in every area. You're never perfect. For me, I felt like I probably let out a lot of my frustration at my player box, more than I would have liked, looking back on it. But when you're in the heat of the moment, and it was a hard thing for me because I was probably more so like an Andy Murray kind, where I didn't feel like it affected my tennis though. I needed an outlet sometimes, and that was the way of me letting out, but then I was able to move on. I see a lot of players and even juniors nowadays where it actually affects them. It's a snowball problem, whereas I didn't feel like I had that issue. I felt like I needed to let it out in some way. I didn't go smashing rackets, but my frustration was certainly felt to my player box at times, and I look back on that and I probably see it more so even in my commentary now, and I kind of think, oh, that's one thing I probably wish if I had my time over I could change. And I understand in the heat of battle, Andy Murray talks about it a lot. And I feel like he's way worse than I was ever. And he's one of the greatest competitors our sport's ever seen, But that's one thing that, looking back, I would have preferred if I handled differently.
Yeah, I think for me, one thing that sort of comes to mind is maybe being able to be a little bit more honest with how I was feeling, maybe before matches when you're going through your tactics and game plan and all that, and your coach is like, how are you feeling, or what do you think? You're like, oh yeah, I'm good. You're not good all the time. So maybe actually having the courage to speak up and say, actually, I am feeling like this, or geez, I hate playing this girl and I don't know what to do. I always feel under pressure, whatever it may be. Actually having maybe a bit more courage to speak up about that and feel a bit more vulnerable and not be so guarded and like that. And that's probably something throughout my whole career. I probably was that little bit guarded in lots of different aspects. So yeah, maybe just to kind of, be a little bit more open and just a bit more vulnerable.
Piney?
Yeah, I think I had a brief chat with Sam last night, but just obviously at Leighton, Alex had an amazing mentor in you early and was able to see what Australian tennis was about. I think, and the best thing for him was to see how you behaved and how you, I think right now we're talking about character and culture, and you guys are doing a great team of building that at that top level. But my war stories about Australian tennis. But, right, our kids, our 14-year-olds know nothing about you. They know nothing about Alex's journey. They know nothing about you. So, I'm really interested in that opportunity of how we can actually affect culture and character and ultimately give you, your team, more success, because we're going to have a pipeline and Sam, a pipeline of young Australian tennis players we're proud of. And I think, when you led that back in the day when they were in Scotland with you, that was an incredible experience for them that made them want to be Davis Cup players for Australia and play for you. So, I'm just interested to know, moving forward, can we get better at that? And I know it's different with the Davis Cup setup.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. It was always fortunate when we had more Davis Cup ties here, and that's one of the biggest losses. Everyone knows how I feel about the format and the structure, and that's one of the biggest losses we have, is that our kids don't see and don't feel tennis or pro tennis. We feel it for 1 month of the year, January, and it's unbelievable that month, but then they're around all these other great sports and great sporting athletes, and you see them front page of the papers and on the news and social media and everything. That's what we're up against, and somehow we have to, like, I'd love nothing more than to get host the Davis Cup finals and not go to friggin' Spain, and we can turn on a massive thing here in November one year. And can you do that, Tim? Okay?
Thumbs up.
All right. Thank you, mate. We'll get that done next year. We'll be in Brisbane. Here we go. But to get the kids around that and to see these guys firsthand, and it's hard because Alex and Alexi, they're based overseas. Well, most of our guys are based overseas all the time, but these are two of our young prospects moving forward who are going to hold, they're going to be top 20 at least for the next 10 years or so, carrying our game, and they're both based overseas, and they come back, and for them to do much promotion and things within January is hard. For them, they're trying to concentrate on what they've got to do in the United Cup, the Brisbane International, and then obviously leading into the Australian Open, the biggest tournament for them of the year. So for us to somehow get that connection would be massive. Getting them back to Australia, whatever. I know there's the very elite kids, if we're taking them on trips and they're around some of these tournaments, and somehow getting them to go and sit courtside at one of Alex's practices would be massive. Things like that we've got to look at, because if you can go and just sit courtside and see his feet moving and how impressive that is every time he gets on the court, you don't even have to tell him. You just say, look at this. So those opportunities, I know it's not easy, but somehow we've got to probably get the best kids to be able to over there to see it, because our best players aren't coming back that often. Yeah, absolutely, to try and integrate that in some way. And all these boys in the Davis Cup, and I'm sure it's the same with the Billie Jean King, the guys would love to do it. They wouldn't have a problem. They actually enjoy seeing these, the young kids being around and wearing their Australian shirts and, signing it, having photos, having a chat, whatever. They wouldn't mind at all. And it can sometimes be just at a lesser tournament where it's not as much pressure at a Grand Slam or whatever as well, at some of those events, and just get the kids around it. Maybe that's one way of looking at it with the tours, and actually getting the kids to, finding it courts off-site, and they do a session and they come and watch the best players for, some of their matches and practice sessions.
Even like junior slams, like if we start having some more kids playing these junior tournaments, you're actually there. You're at the same event as Demon playing deep in, Grand Slams, Popper, and hopefully some more girls going second week. So again, it's if they're in that environment and seeing the best around them all the time, they can then be part of it and make it a priority to be like, oh, geez, I wonder what time Alex is practicing today, or he's at 12. I'm going to practice at 10 to make sure I can be there. So, and like Leighton said, the pro players, they're more than happy to do all that when they can. And obviously, the bigger the event, the harder it is to really do stuff. But I think there is some opportunity there.
Just on that, Sam, and what was evident at the US was when Hayden and Emerson were playing. I mean, Leighton, you had Pops going through huge days. Everywhere I looked when I was watching Emerson or Hayden, I'd see Leighton there with Krabby. I mean, you had 15 minutes to eat your Pokeball there, but you were there watching him support. Same thing with Sammy. That's really evident from the players as well, that your presence at those events and during those matches, it is a real great connection to both of you as well. And, talking about Emerson as an example, the older pro girls, like probably more Dizzy, Preta, more Queensland based, they're, as soon as one of those girls is doing well, they're throwing it on social media. think those simple things, but if you talk to the players, they're like, oh my God, Leighton was watching, oh my God, Sam was watching. That's what really matters to them.
Yeah, well, obviously, we want to get more players playing the junior slams too, just to get the experience, for the kids to get the opportunity to play there and have, somewhat of crowds and go through the emotions of actually walking out there and, having ball kids and electronic line calls and all these things that, don't get thrown at you at too many junior tournaments, to go out there. And as I said, I'm not a believer in winning junior slams and stuff. At the end of the day, I've seen plenty of those come and go over time, and you've got to keep evolving and become a better player. But I think just that experience, at least, to play those slams at least once and go through that, and then you come back as a senior player playing qualies for the first time, and it's not all new. You understand what it's all about.
Sammy, you have one?
Well, I was just going to make a comment with Junior Davis Cup. Obviously did that with Leighton, he's a young lad, but I think we sort of crossed over with the girls, and I think that was amazing. Like having Leighton there, and the girls sort of in the semis and the finals. Like Renee's looking over at Leighton, and she's like, I'm gonna get off my ass here. Let's go. And we were all as a team there, like really pushing it, and it was like, to me, it was just that's the culture. And those girls at that time, and even the lads, got to see that firsthand. And then there was probably one other time I do remember on court where I got stuck into the other boys because one of them had lost their singles, and they were off grabbing their food and didn't come back for an hour. And Cruz is out on the court playing. He's like, "Where are my teammates?" And I'm obviously on the court, so went off and said, "Mate, you guys back here. Your teammates out here playing. That's what it should be." And, those are lessons on the road that we've got to try and find for all of our kids when they're not getting done, or the expectation of them is not, they don't know it, or we need to teach that. And those are the experiences on tours and teams that hopefully we're able to do and set that cultural piece. It's not for the masses, but for the ones that we are taking on the road in those birth years, it's a huge thing.
Nathan, I think you had one.
Sam, reflecting back on how you were saying that you wish you opened up a bit more vulnerable, a bit more open-minded about how you're feeling. If a coach came along with deed boxes keyring of 500 keys, looking back down, do you feel you'd be able to tell them which keys that they needed to use, or you feel like at that moment in your career, I was just a bolt and no one's getting through?
Yeah, I don't know if I would have known. I think, sometimes you're not really aware either at the time that you might be doing that as well, or it's just so second nature, it's kind of just the way it is. But, it's hard. I do wish I could have been more open. Maybe, depending on who the coach is, or there's just maybe another way to go about it, perhaps there would have been. But I'm not saying nothing was wrong as such, but I think some of it's just self-awareness as well, of knowing that. And it wasn't probably just in my tennis either. So that's kind of innate then, isn't it? So that's a hard one, I think. But it's not. I don't think it can always be put on the coach as well solely, because ultimately it's still up to the players sometimes to give that little bit, to feel like the coach is kind of knocking on the right door, or they're getting close to that right key too.
Have we got one or two more, if there are one or two more?
Yeah, maybe for both of you. I'm just thinking from your private coaches that you had growing up and your parents, the role maybe and the alignment of values that they might have had on your journey as a junior player, kind of growing up. Was that something that you feel like aligned between your coaches and parents? They were able to almost compound the messages you were getting to build those beliefs and those values in you.
Yeah, for me it probably was. It was pretty easy. My parents came from professional sport as well, so they understood, I guess, the demands and of going down that path. But they never thought for a minute that they were tennis coaches or they knew anything about tennis. So they tried to put me with a private coach from the age of 6 that obviously they tried to find the best one that they could at the time, and they probably found the best technical coach, I think, especially in Adelaide at the time. I think in terms of respect, that was the one thing always driven into me from a young age. And that didn't matter who you were dealing with. Tyz's brother, Roger, he was my squad coach at Tennis South Australia. So I had him, I had Peter Smith, and then my parents, and I felt like they were all on the same page in terms of the values that I had to carry as a player. And then it sort of crossed over once I got to sort of that 14, 15 age, and I started to be around Newk and Roche as the Davis Cup. And I understand not every path is going to be that fluent through, but for me it certainly helped having everyone aligned and on the same page. And I know there's challenges at junior age, especially with parents and thinking their way is better than what sometimes the coach is thinking, and that is a real challenge. And I don't have an answer to around, and I think we have to, as a group, be able to come up with some solution where that trust is put into the federation or the coaches that are put in charge of those particular athletes to be able to, but it still comes back to the standard that we all set as what's acceptable, and making the parents know that as well, if it depends how many times they actually fall out of line with it, but we've got to take a tough stance at some stage as well. And try and nip it in the bud as early as possible.
Yeah, I mean, my parents had no idea about tennis when I started. They didn't even know how to score, so a bit different starting out. So they certainly weren't telling me how to hit forehands or backhands or anything like that. But one of my very early coaches, I think that he taught me that it was giving your best, working hard. I don't think he was the greatest technical coach in the world, but he tried to get me exploring all parts of the court. We'd work on volleys, we'd work on my serve, we'd do groundies, obviously. He really put in a lot for me as a private coach when I was young. He picked me up from school some days and drive me to the tennis club. He charged my parents $50 a week, and I was at the tennis club every day. So I think I was very lucky in that respect that I had this guy running his business, but found hours every day to include me either for a private lesson or a squad that he arranged, or got one of his mates who played pennant to hit with me, or whatever it may be. So I think that taught me a lot about respect and value, and shake hands at the end of every session. And it wasn't like drilled in to be, this is the checklist and this is what you're going to do, but over time it just became nature to try and behave like that. And I think I'm very lucky that all of my coaches throughout my younger days were very much like that, and some were more technical than others and whatever, but I think those values about behaviour and all that certainly were all part of it. And yes, my parents were very involved, but they never once tried to tell me, how to hit the ball or anything like that. And I had a brother who, travelled with me, took me on my first overseas trips. But so everyone was involved, but I think, I'm pretty lucky that overall it wasn't, in a bad way. They might have, ask questions. My mum liked to kind of ask a few questions every now and then. My dad would tell her to be more quiet. So, but yeah, it was always more of a real supporting nature. So yeah, I know that's not always typical.
Last one. Anyone got one more? Danny.
Mark yesterday spoke about the importance of joy in, I guess, a team culture and linking it to performance. And Sam, we had a brief chat on it yesterday. I'm curious what you guys reflect on your playing careers, probably both at the peak and maybe in the troughs of your playing. Was joy something that was important, or something you guys considered as a recipe to success that you guys had on court? / do we think that's something that's really important to instill in our players now coming through?
Yeah, it's probably something, thinking back, you probably you take it for granted a little bit, some of the results, and not actually enjoy it as much as you probably do at the time. And that's fine. I was very young when I first came on the tour and had good success at a young age, and I was always sort of, I guess, taught in a lot of ways that, there's always room for improvement. I'm only 19, 20 years old, and so I'm still, not even close to fully developed as a player either. So at that stage, looking back now, I wish I enjoyed those moments. My first 5 years on tour, I played in 4 Davis Cup finals. For me, it was just a given that we'd be there in the start of December, either playing in Melbourne at Rod Laver Arena or playing in Spain or France in the Davis Cup final in front of 20,000 people, So when I look back, then you start realising when we drop back to the Asia-Oceania qualifying matches, no, they were good times. You do take those things. So that's one thing with the Davis Cup boys and this stupid format that we're playing at the moment. We play these 3 ties in a row, but when we win, I get the boys in the locker room or our team room afterwards, and I want them to enjoy it. That moment, I said, boys, this is so bloody hard to win a Davis Cup tie. People do not understand, and it's only 3 matches, I get it, but to come together and to be able to, even get this win last time, our first win against France in Valencia, and we're playing in this brutal group. When we're the top seed, Spain, for some reasons, ranked 16 in the world at the moment. It's ridiculous. They've got the best player going around. But I knew we needed to beat France and the Czech Republic to give ourselves a chance. And that first day, I just said, we're bloody close to losing. Tanasi did an amazing effort to beat Arthur Fields, and then Pop went down to Humber, and then the doubles boys did it again in a very tight 3-setter. But once we got in the locker, I said, boys, tonight, you enjoy this. Give yourselves a pat on the back, pump each other up, talk about all the good things that you felt out in the court today in terms of those small moments when, Max, you friggin' put on a clinic, mate, with that forehand down the line. You looked over to the boys and said, yeah, bring it on. No one can go with me. And actually talk about, Max gives this little C that Sharky's talking about here, but, he basically, before he walks, Max is a very confident guy. He's a different character, and trying to get him into a team environment, if you use him the right way, he can be a massive strength for the team. But having him, because everyone walks a little bit taller with his confidence, but him on the court, and he'll hit a winner and he'll sort of signal us the letter C, like I'm putting on a clinic out here. This is just non-stop with the boys, and there's a fine line, and I don't think I could let many of the other boys get to that stage where they're thinking about other things, but Max, you kind of, and that's what comes back to what I was saying yesterday in terms of knowing your players, because once I see Matty Ebden start getting a little bit too confident, I've got to pull him back in, because he's not going to play his best tennis when he's like that. Whereas Max, he's got to be up front with his chest out, looking at these guys, them feeling he's present, that he's about to take their head off with a forehand, So that's where it comes back to knowing your players. But, in terms of the enjoyment and getting joy out of it, absolutely. The schedule and the tour is so bloody tough out there, and to win any tennis matches at any age. So, if the kid's done well, you've got to feel like, there is that joy at the end of the end of a match, and something they've done well, and let them know that.
Yeah, when we spoke about that yesterday a little bit, but there was... So you can go through your career. I won 8 or 9 singles titles, and I think for half of those I was on a plane or a train to the next tournament as soon as the match finished. So you don't get to celebrate and enjoy those moments. It's only 9 times in 20 years that you actually have that feeling of doing that in a singles event, and you think, geez, I wish I could have enjoyed those moments more. But I think as far as being on court, that was something that I did lose a little bit. And when I started working with Stubbsy towards the end of my career, the exact word that she gave me was, I want you to find the joy in being out there again, in competing, in, being in a hard match, whatever it may be. Just find the joy of playing, and then the best will come out. And you may not win, but you can walk off knowing that, okay, at least I found that joy. And it's not always hitting the best shot or winning or, hitting whatever, but sometimes just the battle. And 2 matches for me that actually stand out in that is one back in the day Fed Cup match, playing in Germany, in Stuttgart. I was playing Petkovic. If I hit an ace, it was dead silent. If I hit a double fault, crowd would erupt. I did not get one clap from anyone in the crowd except for the 10 people on the sideline. I lost 9-7 in the third and was absolutely devastated at the end of it. But I still look back on that one match and think, geez, that was good. I loved it. I love that feeling of being out there and competing, and I had ultimate joy in that moment, even though 10 out of 5,000 people wanted me to win. it was the best. And obviously with these formats now, we don't get that very often, which is a real shame. And then another match that stands out, these aren't the biggest matches of my career, but was actually playing Dasher in the final of Strasbourg one week before French Open in 2017, and we were in a absolute battle out there. And I didn't love playing Dash sometimes because you just knew she'd run for everything, she'd be aggressive, she'd be counter punching, she'd scrap, she'd fight. It was always really hard, but I had ultimate joy in playing that match. And I actually knew if I lost that one, I'd lose the #1 Australian ranking too. So I think it gave me a little bit of extra edge to want to win and keep it for another few weeks. But it was really enjoyable. It was fun. And I think you can look back on moments and it's easy to, lose that and get caught up in everything else. But there's got to be some way of finding that enjoyment in hard situations. And that's not standing around getting the balls saying, oh, geez, I'm having fun today. Like, let me try and win this point. But it's within you, to be like that.
Well, I think Sam and Leighton, you're the leaders of our sport. You're doing a great job leading and captaining our national teams. I'm sure the entire room are really appreciative of what you've given to be here over the last couple of days and to share your insights again over the last hour. So if everyone could join with me in showing their appreciation.